Disney Parks President Josh D'Amaro just said that there's enough room at Anaheim to build another Disneyland if they choose to. CEO Bob Iger said that Disney's going to rely on quantity over quality in the near future. Newsworthy comments? Headline material. Or are these more of the blue sky saying words but not really saying anything at all type thing? I'll tell you what I think, but first, some context. Both of these comments were made at a town hall on Tuesday that was being broadcast just to Disney cast members. As you recall, Iger held one of these last year, just after he had taken over or been rehired as Disney president. Back then, there was a lot of excitement and optimism about Iger's return to the Disney company, but also specifically about that very town hall. We were all hoping to hear about any big plans or shakeups in the wake of Bob Chapek expiring, and certainly we should expect some kind of changes, right? Turns out not so much. It's been my observation that things have, in the year since Bob Iger took over again, it's been about the same. Turns out, not so much. It's been my observation that things in the year since Iger took over again for Chapek, that things have been, they've remained pretty much the same, which is not great. Now, I will say, over the past few months, that the Disney company has been experiencing something of a rebound period. Disney Parks, in the last earnings call, were said to be doing very well, and the stock price has been improving, has picked up a lot of steam. It's got a little bit of momentum. But the Disney Film Studios, man, they are going through it right now, and all of them. All the studios are doing poorly right now. So that's the state of things right now as we enter this town hall, which, by the way, wasn't really exactly a town hall. Yes, it was broadcast only to Disney cast members, but there was no Q&A period. It felt more like an interview, and then there was no Q&A period, which is typical, customary for these types of town hall events. I will say, though, that probably doesn't mean much because the kind of questions that get asked and answered at a town hall are usually, of the softball variety. I mean, at least that was my takeaway from last year's event, where there were questions asked, but none of them had any sort of substance. The answers given weren't very informative. So with that said, how did things go this year? More the same? Yeah, I think so. But things were said. Here's a rundown of some of the things that were quoted at this year's town hall. In addressing Disney cast members in general as opposed to answering a question, Iger repeated a statement that he had made during Disney's last earnings call, that he's looking forward to building again after spending 2023 mending parts of the Disney business that needed attention. And I feel like that's an encouraging statement. I liked hearing that then during the earnings call, and I liked hearing that again during this town hall. I like hearing that they're looking to build instead of fix, assuming, of course, that means that they have done all the fixing, that everything that needs fixing is fixed. Now, we could challenge that opinion, at least from our perspective here at Disney Parks, where I think that we can all say things are far from fixed. But I mean, I'm hoping that that's what he means. And maybe we got some plans coming up in 2024 that haven't been revealed yet. But anyway, build what? What is he going to build? The $60 billion investment promise that Disney made a few months ago, that came up again. But again, with no real indication about what that money is earmarked for or what future plans they might have. We're aware of the things that are going on now, but what else he got? And by the way, you'll recall that Disney's acting CFO said in that last earnings call that the majority of that $60 billion that was promised, and that's over a 10-year period, the majority of that $60 billion was going to be spent in the latter part of that 10-year period. So definitely there's nothing imminent. There's nothing in the pipeline right now. So if we're evaluating how meaningful the statements made during this town hall are, we're off to a bad start, because that is definitely sort of an empty statement, nor is it anything that we haven't already heard before. Now, related to the conversation about Disney Parks expansion, Parks President Josh D'Amaro had this to say: "We've got so much space to play with. Disneyland, for example, Walt's original theme park. We still have enough room to build another Disneyland there if we choose to do that." Now, I got to say, this is something that Josh D'Amaro has gotten really good at. Saying things with an intent to get you excited and hyped up, but not really saying anything at all. Just blue sky and hype. For example, his now famous "What's behind Big Thunder" moment that he had at last year's D23. Similar comments and non-committal statements were made at the last Destination D23 about the update to Dinoland and the dinosaur attraction at Animal Kingdom. You know, the one where they're going to replace the dinosaur attraction with a copy of our Indiana Jones Adventure here at Disneyland. Which, to that I should add that the fact that they're not fully committing to this idea and being open about it is truly very, very confusing. If you're going to update Dinoland, and it needs updating, and you've got an attraction that is a literal copy of an existing attraction, a very, very popular existing attraction here at Disneyland, that, by the way, also uses an IP that is very, very popular, I cannot think of anything that is more of a slam dunk than making that part of Dinoland an Indiana Jones themed mini land and putting the Indiana Jones Adventure in there. Why aren't they just saying it? Just get on with it. Everybody wants this. At least I think they do. They should. Indiana Jones Adventure is great. The queue is great. Everything about that attraction is great. Animal Kingdom would be lucky to have the Indiana Jones Adventure, but I digress. Reading that statement from Josh D'Amaro again, there is enough room in Anaheim to build another Disneyland. Now, first, I can concede that this could be true technically. My assumption would be that he means the Toy Story parking lot. That's the only parcel that I could think of that is even remotely possible to hold, big enough to hold a theme park. The space allocated for Disneyland Forward is not big enough to create a full-size theme park, not by a mile, not by half. Meanwhile, the concept art that was given with the Disneyland Forward proposal shows that space, the Toy Story parking lot, being earmarked for a Disney Springs type space, a mixed use shopping, hotels, that kind of thing, not theme park. And other than that, I mean, while Disney might own other properties in and around the Disneyland Resort, none of them would come together in a way that would be, like I said, enough to build a theme park, certainly. So offhand, this just sounds like more D'Amaro bluster. And I have to caution everybody to not to hear more than what he's just saying. But while we're at it, on that note, let's go ahead and drop the fact that he also said at the end of that statement, if we choose to, which means that they have exactly not chosen to do that. He's saying if we choose to, but we haven't, that's the empty part of that statement. If we choose to do that, but we haven't. We could, it's possible if we choose to, but we're not going to. And on top of that, I will add that these events, situations like this, they are very well planned, very well choreographed, scripted. So it's not like D'Amaro is speaking from the hip, and he's just saying stuff. There is purpose and intent. That statement was given to him to say in order to create a response from Disney Parks fans. His comments are definitely meant to trigger Parks fans, to give them hope and to get them excited about the future of Disney Parks. But I do not expect them to build another Disneyland here in Anaheim. Not in my lifetime, and probably beyond that as well. Now, before we get into other comments made at the town hall, let me just say, on that note, that that's perfectly okay with me. I'm actually good with that. I don't have a problem with him saying that. Or I don't have a problem with them not building another Disneyland here in Anaheim. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love to see more parks. More is better. I'm often very envious of Walt Disney World because of all that they have to offer. But now is not the time. It's difficult to do that anyway, but now is not the time for that. Disney needs to get their house in order first. They need to get the foundation built up again and get more people loving the Disney company again. That is job one, in my opinion. And every decision that they make going forward should be in an effort to change the public's opinion about the Disney company. The people who still love Disney are going to still love Disney either way. But they're losing fans because of a myriad of issues. So they've got to change the perception of the Disney company before they can do anything else, before they spend any more money on anything. That's job one. Now, speaking about building, Iger said, they were trying to build again. But I don't necessarily mean, and I don't think he meant necessarily parks specifically, just about building the company back up again. I mean, I know we're all parks focused here, but Disneyland is just a part of a bigger, larger Disney family, and everything in the Disney company is related. Speaking of everything being related, that reminds me of another comment that Iger made regarding that very topic. He remarked that a string of hit movies at the Disney company can make people giddy. Those were his words. And by people, he means people who work for the Disney company in various divisions. And he's right, of course. The studios are the foundation of the entire Disney company. Quite literally, everything was built on the backs of Mickey Mouse and those films and of Snow White. But it's still true today. The films are the driving force for every other division. Merchandise, streaming on Disney Plus, sequels, licensing, Disney parks as well. Everything begins with a box office hit, and nothing can begin until that happens. It's very difficult to keep the machine rolling if you keep putting out bombs in the box office, which brings us back. Studios are in big trouble right now, which again brings me back. We keep circling around these things. It makes it difficult to get any momentum going, and it makes it difficult to do things like expand parks. So that $60 billion figure, again, is more hype. I feel like the bulk of that $60 billion is going to be spent on things that probably you and I aren't going to be incredibly excited about, or it's going to be spent on things that we already know about, things that are already in production, i.e. like Epcot. Whatever they're doing there, or the cruise ships, or overseas parks. Which, I mean, that's great that they can build more stuff overseas, but that doesn't really affect you and me, the folks who are watching this episode of Fresh Baked. So, returning again to Disney films, Iger had this to say. In assessing some of our performance recently, one of the reasons I believe it's fallen off a bit is that we were making too much. I think when it comes to creativity, quality is critical, of course. And quantity, in many ways, can destroy quality. Storytelling, obviously, is the core of what we do as a company. This is a very true statement. I'm not sure that any of us could argue with any part of that. Quality has fallen off a bit. They're making too many movies. Quantity affects quality. Got it. When did we make this happen? When do we start? Actually, it won't be quite a while, at least not too visibly. It's going to be a little while before we see them slowing down in production, because there are so many projects, so many things in development now that it's difficult to turn that ship around on a dime. Even though this is a statement, an initiative that Iger initiated, I think back in February. He made comments similar to this back in February. So it's something that they should already have been working on, and that should be affecting the calendar coming up. But I have to say, when looking at that calendar, I do hope that this initiative, I do hope they target some of those really big budget movies, which, by the way, it seems like every movie that Disney makes right now is requiring a big budget, which I just don't understand, to be honest. But that's another conversation. Iger also alluded to the fact that the days of, big box office numbers that Disney was seeing, like back in 2019, those days are past. He's aware of that. We're probably not ever going to see numbers like we saw in 2019 at the Disney box office. So it's time to adjust the mindset and the game plan, which, again, they should have been doing this already, but if they haven't, here we are now. Adjust the mindset and the game plan. Go for more singles and doubles as opposed to the big box office home run. And that includes franchises. That includes studios like Marvel and Star Wars, who only seem to want to make big budget movies. Speaking of Star Wars, I looked up what films Disney has, in development for Star Wars in the future years. There's the Rey Skywalker new Jedi movie, Dave Filoni's Mandalorian movie, which right there, that's one that I can see getting the axe, even with Filoni now chief creative officer at Lucasfilm. And the reason why I say that is because, man, did that fall off. Did the Mandalorian fall off? Season 3, not great. Boba Fett, I mean, is that related? Can we put Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian in the same conversation? I feel like we can, if only because the two production Book of Boba Fett and Season 3 of The Mandalorian were so similar. I have to say, they were very similar, as if they were all shot at the same time. And I just mean the stories and the production values, the way they look were the same. Whereas there was a certain grittiness to the first two seasons of The Mandalorian. That wasn't the case in Season 3. Again, we're getting off track. Let's get back to this list. You've got James Mangold's Dawn of the Jedi movie. I don't know much about that. The Lando movie. Now, that was one that was supposed to be a series on Disney+, but that recently changed. You got Sean Levy's Star Wars movie. He's currently making Deadpool 3. That guy's got a pretty good resume, Sean Levy does, so I have a feeling that one's going to stick around. Rian Johnson's Star Wars trilogy. I'm laughing out loud. It's kind of hilarious that this is still being talked about as a thing. Not that I don't like Rian Johnson. I'm actually one of the people who likes The Last Jedi and didn't like Rise. I like Rian Johnson. He's a great filmmaker. But I've laughed because we've been talking about this trilogy ever since Last Jedi. So, and they keep saying it's going to happen, but it never does. And I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's ever going to happen. And then you've got Taika Waititi's movie, which, I mean, that should get the axe as well, right? Especially after he said, what I saw on Twitter anyway, that it's going to be a Taika Waititi movie and that it will probably piss a lot of people off. Oy, oy, oy. Those are not the kind of words that you want to hear from him. I'm going to make a movie that you're not going to like. And it's going to be a Star Wars movie. It's going to cost $300 million. How do you feel about that? I don't feel good about that at all. So on this, while it is something that we have heard before from Iger, and maybe it's an empty statement, I don't know. I sure feel like, though, it needs to happen. I think the health and well-being of the Disney company is literally at stake when it comes to Disney films. So I do hope that they are earnest in their effort to spend less and make better movies as opposed to just churning out content constantly. And with that, we have concluded our summation of what was said at this town hall meeting. No breaking news, kind of meh in regards to some of the things that were being said in that event, especially from D'Amaro, which it's becoming, again, kind of cliche at this point. Would have preferred some comments or questions from the cast, but I get it. I mean, again, this is more a PR statement or a PR move than it is an actual town hall. But I mean, I would have liked to have heard something like that just to see what happens. But here's to hoping that Disney does stay on the positive side of things in 2024. Anyway, here's to hoping that Disney stays on the positive side of things in 2024. I'm really rooting for you guys. I'm really rooting for Disney because I love the Disney company, all parts of it. And I prefer loving the Disney company than not. That's my opinion anyway. Let us know, obviously, your thoughts, Fresh Baked. I would love to hear what you think. And then follow us on Instagram at _FreshBaked, on Twitter at FreshBakedDisney, that's Fresh with no E, and on TikTok at FreshBakedDisney. If you like our show and want to show your support, please do consider joining our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/FreshBaked. Otherwise, thanks again for watching, everybody. We love you. Be safe out there. Be kind to one another. Fresh Baked.